Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. One of the main goals that we've got on our farm is building up our soil's organic matter levels. We'll talk about why that's so important on today's show.
If you've harvested an early crop, or maybe it's wheat, something like that, you're probably thinking, okay, I've got some weeds that are coming up after that. We'll talk about what your burn down options are for late summer coming up later today.
Well, one of those things you may need to burn down is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this tough weed. But first, here's our farm basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Earlier this summer, I was in Arkansas and Missouri looking at some dicamba drift issues, or what people thought were drift issues. What ended up happening is there was volatility, so the product became a gas, moved up in the air, and there was a temperature inversion which didn't allow that gas to disappear. It stayed lower in the atmosphere. And so today we wanted to talk just a little bit about temperature inversions so you understand this very important concept in farming.
First of all, terminology is very important because there's getting to be some regulation around this term drift. And when we think about drift, like Brian said, drift to a farmer means it physically blew away as you were doing it. Volatility means it landed, it picked up and moved later. Brian mentioned the term air inversion, where we get temperatures not the way they're supposed to be, where the temperature down low, close to the earth, is actually cooler than the temperature up higher in the air. You may see it when you're flying sometimes. Brian and I happened to be flying this past winter, and we were flying into Rochester, Minnesota, and the pilot said, man, we've got quite an air inversion here. We're 40 degrees up several thousand feet, and then down on the ground, it was well below freezing, and there was a lot of frost on the ground. That's not a normal situation to happen.
Okay, so normally the way this works is the air gets cooler as you move up. But what can happen a lot of times is the hot air, as it's rising, gets trapped. And then, especially when you get to early morning when the temperature is at its coolest. So early morning, the air cools off down near the soil surface, but above that, the hot air is still trapped there. The problem with the temperature inversion when it comes to spraying is normally if there's a little bit of vapor pressure off a product like dicamba or 2,4-D, it's just going to go way up in the air, it's going to disperse, nothing ever happens to it, it goes thousands of feet in the air, gone. But if it only can go up, let's say 30 feet or 100 feet or a couple hundred feet, well now it actually, that vapor could move sideways a little bit and then fall back down again. That's where we have the problem with vapor pressure, volatility, and temperature inversions.
Now the thing about temperature inversions, because you may be thinking, well, wow, how do farmers know when there's going to be an inversion? How do they avoid them? We don't see those kinds of inversions in the middle of the day. We see those inversions a lot of times really early in the morning. And so you may be thinking, well, hey, we just need to avoid that early morning spray. Well, that would be good. But the other side is the late evening sprays. And this is one where farmers really have a challenge. Farmers are trying to find days when it's really not very windy. In the summer, a lot of times you think about that breeze that we get seemingly all the time and how nice it feels to get that cool breeze on a hot day. Well, for farmers, they want to avoid drift. Like I said, drift is when you're spraying and the spray blows off target. So farmers are looking for days when there's not much wind, and a lot of times that means early morning or into the evening. The problem with that is if you're spraying late in the evening, well, it's cooling down in the evening. There may be a lot of humidity. There may be some dew now that holds that spray in a liquid form on the leaves. And in the morning, if you've got an inversion, you could have a big problem.
So the point is, like with dicamba or any other product that has volatility, and mainly it's just dicamba and 2,4-D. So there is no issue with volatility with Roundup or most of the other herbicides we spray. But we do worry about dicamba and we worry about 2,4-D. Anyway, with this volatility, as soon as the product dries into the leaf, it gets absorbed into the leaf, we're good. There's no more volatility. As soon as there's rain and it washes into the plant or into the ground, no more volatility. What we worry about is when there is a lot of humidity there, and like Darren said, a lot of moisture, so the product doesn't get fully absorbed into the plant. Then the air inversion hits. Now the product starts moving up in the air. That's when we've got a real problem. So what I told the guys in Arkansas and Missouri is if you want to avoid problems, it's real simple. You spray only when it's sunny. Okay? You spray when it's sunny, especially between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. You do that, you're home free. All right? Yes, you can spray early in the morning, you can spray into the evening, but it better be clear days. You better have no real risk for temperature inversion. Otherwise, that's when you're going to have the problem. The other last thing that I'll point out is where were most of the problems with dicamba? They were right near the Mississippi River. Well, product is going to move to the lowest points. Okay, where's the lowest point? Well, it's going to be right near rivers. Okay, so that's why they had all the problem with the dicamba drift as you get into eastern Arkansas and southeast Missouri.
Well, it's often said that farmers watch the weather as close or closer than anyone else out there, and here's why. Because they're worried about things like temperature inversions that could take spray that lands in the right place and move it if the weather was wrong. One other thing that farmers are also watching in their fields is our weed of the week. We'll show you how to stop this weed coming up later in the show.
Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a new seed treatment technology controls nematodes before they attack. Introducing NemaStrike technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NemaStrike technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
So far, looking behind the machine, I'm thoroughly impressed with them. Compared to the older concaves we were running, we were finding about 40 grains, and we put these new ones in it, and it's hard to find one.
After the break, I found out about these concaves. While we were down, we put these concaves in, and it was like a different machine. I'd say we probably saved 3 to 5 bushels to the acre. I probably tripled my money just by putting these in.
Nodulation. It's essential for nitrogen fixation in soybeans, but how can you help it happen in your fields? Monsanto BioAg offers inoculants that answer that question. Microbial seed applied solutions that work to establish high populations of rhizobia in your fields, helping with optimum nodulation and increased performance in your soybeans. Learn how inoculants powered by nature can help you at monsantobioag.com/inoculate.
Tired of that old warped poly boom ruining your spray applications? Express Boom from Hypro is a fully assembled stainless steel boom that ensures an even application of chemicals every time. Don't wait another season, upgrade today. Hypro, helping you spray better.
Leading the charge in strip tillage for more than a decade, the Soil Warrior brings the future to your farm today.
When there's work to be done on your farm, you can't afford to be grounded. Whether for repair or upgrade, you need quality new, used, and rebuilt parts fast. Worthington Ag Parts has what you need, and our distribution network offers same-day service to much of the country. And with 15% off all parts ordered in July, now's a great time to get to know us. Worthington Ag Parts, providing quality parts at quality prices and adding value to your farm operations for over 50 years.
Over the last few years, we've gotten a lot of questions about how can we build organic matter in soil. As a farmer, you know how important organic matter is. It basically kind of cushions your soil. It's like a sponge in your soil also to hold water and nutrients until your crop needs it. It is just incredibly important for overall soil health. So today we will talk about how you can build organic matter levels in the short term and the long term on your farm.
All right, let's start with the big thing first, tillage. We get a lot of questions about tillage. Hey, should I work more of that residue into my soil, or should I quit working the ground entirely? Well, if you quit working the ground entirely, that would be the best thing you could do if you want to try to build organic matter quickly. Now, at that point, some people say, wait a second here, don't I want to put some of that organic material from the top of the soil down in? Isn't that what's going to build things? Actually, it kind of works the opposite way. if you start working the ground and putting more of that organic material off the top of the ground in, you're actually putting a whole bunch of oxygen down into the soil too. And it really is like adding fuel to the fire, and it starts burning it up quicker. So sometimes people will say, well, I hadn't done tillage for a while, then I did some full-scale tillage and it really improved my yields. It probably did, because a lot of the nutrients that were tied up in that residue now got broken down fast. So reducing tillage is important. Leaving that root mass intact underneath the soil is really the key. When you think about a big tall corn plant, about half of the plant material is above the surface and about half is below. And if you leave it untilled, that's where you can really build organic matter.
Okay, so reducing tillage, you don't necessarily have to go no-till, but reducing tillage is important. The next thing is, Darren just mentioned corn and its roots. I want you to think about every plant you could possibly raise in your farm and what Darren just said. Half of all the plant mass is going to be above ground, half is below ground. So what's the biggest plant above ground? Well, for most people, that's probably corn. So that plant is going to have the most roots. If you want to build organic matter faster in the short term, and really in the long term, you should plant crops with lots of roots. Corn on average has 5 times the root mass of a soybean plant, so corn would be a better choice than soybeans. Now, I'm not saying don't ever raise soybeans or you can't build organic matter using soybeans. You can, but it's just going to go faster when you plant corn.
One other practice that really helps building organic matter quicker is adding manure. When you think about fertility and adding the right plant food for your crop to grow, there are a couple different ways you can do it. Well, there's many different ways you can do it, but the two probably most common ones are adding commercial fertilizer or adding manure. When you think about manure, there is a lot of organic material in that manure, and you can start building organic matter quicker. What is manure? Well, it's animal waste, right? And what is organic matter? Well, it's the decayed or decaying plant or animal residue. So as you're adding manure out to the field, normally we're putting on multiple tons per acre, and that's a good way to quickly build up organic matter levels out in your soils.
Another practice that's really caught on here in just the last few years has been the use of cover crops. The more months out of the year that you can keep a cover on that soil, the better off you are. So obviously you're going to reduce erosion, and everybody knows that. But in addition to that, like we say, the more you can have roots growing in the soil, and then eventually when that plant dies, the roots will break down, and most of those roots, or many of those roots, will end up becoming organic matter. That's a great thing for the long term. So use cover crops. Now, which cover crop you're going to use, it obviously can make a difference. So you can just look at, there are charts out there. We have some even at agphd.com under our resources tab, talking about which cover crops are best for building organic matter. But almost anything you raise is a lot better than nothing. So that's the big thing, I guess I would say, especially if you have some growing season left in the fall after you've taken a crop off. If you can get a cover crop on there, you've got a lot better shot at building organic matter long term.
One other thing that you could do to help build more organic matter quicker is to build more roots. Biological products are on the market today that are shown to improve root growth on plants. So I get it. It's not as big a deal as reducing tillage, but it is something that could help on a smaller scale, building more roots and ultimately building more organic matter.
All right, so once again, if you want to build organic matter in your soil, which we think is incredibly important in most soils, the first thing you should do is reduce tillage. Next, you want to plant crops with lots of roots. Then consider using manure or compost, either way is fine, cover crops, and biological products. That really should help you in both the short term and long term, building up that soil on your farm.
Fortunately, controlling our weed of the week isn't a 5-step process. We'll show you what will work to stop it coming up later in the show.
Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a new seed treatment technology controls nematodes before they attack. Introducing NemaStrike technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NemaStrike technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
This agro-liquid line is something special. A lot of really impressive playmakers. Take a look at Sure K. This guy, is an enigma.
But wrap your head around the exceptionally high plant response when compared to conventional potassium sources, the research-proven plant availability, plus flexible application options and mixing capabilities.
Really stellar performance stats. Sure K is a true standout, and that's a winning goal on any field.
Introducing the SoilMax ZD48, the newest addition to the SoilMax Gold Digger lineup. The first plow designed for smaller class tractors, the ZD48 has been tested on tractors weighing between 10,000 and 16,000 pounds with excellent results. Designed for row crop farms, vineyards, irrigation, and specialty crop farms. The SoilMax ZD48 will install tile up to 48 inches deep, as well as install 3 or 4-inch tile. The ZD48 truly opens up the world of tile installation to more farms than ever before.
With the success of the Case IH Steiger Quad Track and Magnum Road Track tractors, it's no secret why Case IH is the leader of the track. So it wasn't surprising when the competition started imitating us. But only Case IH offers a 5-axle design to give you a smoother ride, more power to the ground, with less berming and compaction. Still, we're flattered. In fact, if we weren't already red, we'd be blushing.
Hey, I'm Lisa Kelly. You might know me from history's Ice Road Truckers, but this summer, I'm looking for a change of scenery. We'll be visiting Love's travel stops in search of people who, like Dello, are game changers. I can't wait to meet as many of you as possible. Join me as I make my way across America with Chevron to get the word out about its game-changing, heavy-duty diesel engine oil, Dello 400, with Isosin advanced technology. We'll see you out there on the road all summer long with Chevron, Dello, and Love's.
Once wheat harvest is complete, now we've lost crop canopy out in our fields and weeds are left to grow. We're going to talk about some post-harvest wheat burn down options.
Well, it could be any crop though. I mean, maybe let's say you had peas early or some other early season crop. There are weeds that are going to be coming up, and let's say you want to plant a cover crop. Well, you want to get your field again weed free before you put the next crop in, or a cover crop, something like that. In the past, it's traditionally been a Roundup 2,4-D kind of market, but now I would say things are changing for a couple of reasons. Number one, Roundup resistant weeds. Number two, Extend soybeans. So we want to talk about your options and your best options today under those conditions.
The other big thing, Brian, is do we want residual with our herbicides? So in other words, have herbicides that are going to last for a long time out in the soil, or do we just want to kill what's up today? Now let's get back to your idea with the Roundup and Roundup resistant weeds. What we're seeing many farmers do across the country is switch to using gramoxone. Now with gramoxone, it's kind of like Roundup in that it will kill everything that's up in terms of weeds, grass, broadleaves, and so forth. The difference here, though, is gramoxone doesn't get down into the root system. So Roundup has been a really nice option, especially if you've got Canada thistle or perennial weeds, that it can get down into the root system and wipe that out too. But with gramoxone, it's a nice option because a lot of the resistant weeds, or the Roundup resistant weeds, are annual weeds. And many of them are annual broadleaf weeds, and gramoxone does an excellent job and it works very fast.
So what we're saying here is you have to look at your weed spectrum. If you're dealing primarily with perennials that are still susceptible to Roundup, then by all means use Roundup, and in our opinion, we'd probably just use Roundup. Don't put 2,4-D or dicamba or anything else in there, because that's going to stop that Roundup from getting down into the root system. It'll shut the plant down so the plant can't translocate the slow moving Roundup all the way through the big perennial root system. If you've got Canada thistle, for example, we'd tell you 2 or 3 quarts of Roundup, whatever the highest labeled rate is of the Roundup you are using or the glyphosate you are using, use that highest labeled rate. You want to get great, complete control on those perennial weeds. But like Darren said, if you want to control these annual weeds that are Roundup resistant, gramoxone is your option. If you're going to spray gramoxone, then we would probably suggest throwing in 2,4-D or dicamba along with it. That's where I get to this Extend soybean thing. I'd lean toward dicamba if you've got Extend soybeans in your area. Both dicamba and 2,4-D, we have to worry about volatility, but with these new formulations of dicamba, the volatility is just a little bit less. And then obviously if I've got Extend soybeans around, I don't have to worry that I'm going to injure them with dicamba like I would with the 2,4-D.
All right, let's talk about the residual part of this whole equation as well. If you don't want to be out there spraying multiple times through the summer or until you get that next crop going, you may consider using a residual herbicide. Two of the most common ones that we see are Sharpen and Valor. Now there are a number of different residual herbicides that could fit in depending on what your crop rotation is, but crop rotational flexibility is pretty good with Sharpen and with Valor. They don't last forever out in the soil or anything, so it just depends on how much you want to spend on these residuals. The good thing with Sharpen is it has a very quick and potent burn down on broadleaf weeds. Valor also adds some burn to the equation, not quite as much as Sharpen does, but it is a nice burn down product. To get the most out of each of those, you need to add an oil with them. Oftentimes a methylated seed oil is what's used to heat up both of those products, and the tank mix flexibility is pretty good. A lot of the other products that you're going to be putting out there in your field, you could mix in with Valor or Sharpen. One thing about Valor and Sharpen, they're good on burning down broadleaf weeds, but not grasses. So if you do have grasses out there that you need to take care of as well, you'll need either Roundup or Gramoxone in the mix.
The good news when it comes to burn down applications is a lot of these products are much less expensive today than they were a few years ago, so that obviously should help. Well, one of the weeds you may see when you're out there spraying your burn down application is our Weed of the Week. We'll tell you how to stop it on your farm coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Farming isn't just in the land, it's in you. Take control of weeds like never before. Enlist builds on the Roundup Ready system, combining proven control of a new 2,4-D and glyphosate in Enlist Duo herbicide. Protect what matters without changing the way you farm. Talk to your seed or crop protection supplier today.
Our Weed of the Week is a biennial. It's wild carrot.
All right, probably the most important thing here in this Weed of the Week segment is that we're dealing with the biennial weed. When you've got a 2-year life cycle on a weed, well, when is the best time to kill it? In year 1 or year 2? Oftentimes it's year 1. If you can catch it in that first year, that's the year that it's taking lots of nutrients in, it's trying to build up its strength, so year 2 it can produce seed. So when you look at plants, their goal is they want to produce seed. So if you can stop it in year 1, great. If it's year 2, you better get out there early before it gets too far along.
What I'm wondering is why did you let the weed go the whole first year? Get it under control then. But here's why we see it let go the first year is because usually wild carrot shows up in pastures, roadside ditches, fence lines. It's not crop areas where we have the big problem. So immediately I'm thinking about dicamba and 2,4-D. Yes, both of those work fine. Tordon has decent activity and lots of residual. So I'm not that worried about control. But you've got to get out there in that first year so you have the best luck. If you're out there in the second year when the seed head is already formed, well, now you're too late. It's already going to go to seed.
If you're in those non-crop areas, do everything you can to encourage excellent grass growth. That means fertility. That means making sure you have a good thick canopy out there to be able to stop weeds like wild carrot.
Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
We love the quality, we love the construction. We're looking forward to working with Morton in the future.
They have this down to a science. They know exactly what you want. They know how to make it happen. It's an easy process.
I would definitely recommend Morton. From the first time I met the salesman to the last nail that the crew put in, it has been a positive and professional experience.
I'm so happy I found Morton because they just make the job so easy.
Find the building of your dreams at mortonbuildings.com. Invisible, invasive, underestimated. Nematodes are stealing over 10% of yields, and current protection methods aren't enough. But a new seed treatment technology controls nematodes before they attack. Introducing NemaStrike technology. It provides broad spectrum control from the start and stays in the root zone as plants grow. Take back your bushels with NemaStrike technology. Strike where nematodes attack.
We've got teams all over talking about low salt, micronutrient, high efficiency fertilizer teams like it's something new. What's your take?
I tell you, Don, AgroLiquid team has had these technologies for over 30 years.
And really unprecedented application versatility, compatibility, and ease of use. So they're your pick for the championship season?
You bet. Their full line nutrients is going to take them all the way to the root zone.
And now we have Jenny in the field talking with Farmer Dave.
Thanks, Don. Dave, after the impressive turnaround last year, what are your plans for the coming season?
Well, as you know, I changed teams mid-season last year. Now I know my AgroLiquid partners are ready to go to work. I'm completely happy with the performance and the level of dedication I get from AgroLiquid.
From the guys in the field?
Everyone at AgroLiquid. I believe AgroLiquid has me on the road to success.
There you have it, Don. Dave has a plan for another championship season with AgroLiquid.
They're my pick, too. AgroLiquid's going all the way.
Are you looking for an easy way to apply dry powdered products to your stored grain? Do you want to use the applicator recommended by industry leaders for products like Diacon D and other dry powder products? Changing Time CT applicators successfully apply a diversity of products quickly, easily, and accurately. The innovative CT applicators are designed to give you the most accurate application of products such as talc, inoculants, fertilizers, and other dry products. For commercial use or on the farm, you need the applicator industry leaders are using. CT applicators for the changing times.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
The AFS Connect Farm Management System from Case IH connects you, and only you, to the information you need most from your equipment, from anywhere, at any time. AFS Connect, only from Case IH.
How much grain are you losing out the back of your combine during harvest season? For us, the answer was too much. I'll share how we solved this problem in today's Iron Talk. I always carry a 1 foot by 1 foot homemade PVC pipe square with me at harvest time. I also have my smartphone with the Ag PhD Harvest Loss Calculator app. I just walk into any field at harvest and see how many seeds are on the ground in that 1 foot square. Well, with wheat, for example, let's say there were 40 seeds per square foot. That would equate to 2.42 bushels per acre that we lost. At $5 wheat in this example, that would be a $12.10 loss per acre. On 1,000 acres of wheat, that's over $12,000. One solution you should look at is changing out your concaves. We installed a set of Estes concaves this year and noticed a big difference. They have what many refer to as a Pac-Man notch. Now, it leads to better threshing without having to run the rotor so fast. We stopped rotor loss, had cleaner grain going into the trucks, and were able to operate at a slightly faster speed. Best of all, this concave system will work for all crops, so there's less downtime and expense. We always talk about return on investment on our farm. Well, stopping at $12 to $20 per acre loss or more pays for some new concaves in just a few days of operation. Plus, we can use them multiple seasons. I encourage you to get out of the combine. Check what you're losing in harvest loss. When a solution to stop harvest loss comes with better grain samples and faster operating speeds as side benefits, a set of Estes concaves could easily be a must-have for your farm too. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The Quick Belt from Norwood Sales is your all-around grain handling solution. Our conveyor-based system uses an 18-inch belt and a 10-inch tube, which minimizes seed damage while moving more than 10,000 bushels an hour. Keep your grain and your farm moving with the Quick Belt from Norwood Sales.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's show, but before we go, I just want to encourage you to go to the agphd.com website to check out all our events, including the Ag PhD Field Day and Ag PhD Winter Workshops. Also, please tune in to SiriusXM Channel 147 for the Ag PhD radio show. You'll find us each weekday at 2 p.m. Central.
And don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
A healthy soil helps to keep our air and water clean while providing a medium for productive crops, pastures, and shelter belts. To learn more about how farmers are improving the health of their soils, visit rnmf.org.